Hi, my name is Stuart Lynch, and this is the 7th video in the MapKit with SwiftUI and SwiftData series. In this video, we'll be working on the first or opening tab, where I'll show you how you can ask for permission and, if granted, show the user's location on the map. And we'll also create a new service that'll manage this authorization and guide the user to enabling it if somehow they've denied it. Now, as usual, check the table of contents in the description if you want to navigate to a certain point in the video. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If you're working along with me, you can continue on from the source code that you completed in that last video. However, if you're just jumping in here and you want to work along, you can download the completed project from the branch of the last video. Make sure you download the branch from video 6. You can see that I've already started a branch now for this video, and the completed source code for this branch will be in the GitHub repository as well. Links to both branches are in the description. In this video, we're going to focus on the first tab, the trip map view. When our app launches, that first tab appears and we want to display a map of the user's current location. We also want to zoom in and set the camera position for that location, and eventually, if we have any place marks in that area, display them. We're going to be doing much more, but let's just start here. The first thing that we want to do is add a map view instead of this text view. So we'll first have to import MapKit. Then I can replace the text view with a map view, and you'll see that the default view for the location set for your operating system is displayed. And in mine, I believe it's focused around Cupertino, but I can't tell right now. And I'm going to unpin that Start tab for now, as I want to focus on this view. Now, I've had mixed results when trying to show the user's current location in the preview. So for this video, we'll be running mostly in our app simulator. When the app launches, we see that the trip map is showing for me, North America, and that's likely different for you if you're not in North America. What I want to do first is to go to the Destinations tab, and you'll see no destinations entered, because in the preview, we use our mock data. So tap the plus button to add a destination of your choice, and I'm going to stick with Paris. And then I'm immediately taken to the next screen, and I'll need to set my region for that destination. So I have to zoom in now and try and locate Paris and get to an area that I think that I can find some place marks for. So let me do a search to add some place marks. So I'll search for museums, and I'll add 3 or 4 here from this search results. And let me do a manual place marker as well. And I'm going to place one for the Eiffel Tower. Great. But when I'm back on the Trip Map tab, I'm still seeing North America. Your simulators and the preview have a predetermined location that will simulate your current location and show a traditionally blue marker at that location that follows you around as you move. You'll need to tell the simulator, though, where you are, and you can do this from the Features menu and the Locations submenu. Right now, mine is showing as none. Depending on how you've worked in the past, it may show one or another locations. I'm going to suggest that you choose Apple just for this. Well, nothing changes on the screen yet, however. In order to present the user's location, you need to ask permission. So this requires an entry in your info plist. So back in Xcode, tap on the My Trips app in the sidebar and select the My Trips target, and then tap on the Info tab. At the end of the target properties, select the last line and tap on the plus button. Search for and select Privacy, Location When in Use, Usage Description. There's quite a few in this list, but make sure that you find that particular one. and then enter something in the value field like need to know your location so you can plan your routes. Now you should be asking for this permission pretty soon after your app launches. So what I suggest that you do is to create a service that will manage the requests along with a number of other functions. But we'll do that shortly. So let's just see if we can get this working. In the trip map view, I'm going to create an instance of a CL location manager. The CL at the beginning stands for core location, but we don't need to import that framework here because it's already imported when we import MapKit. And then I'm going to create an onAppear block, and inside the closure, I'm going to issue the manager's request when in use authorization function. Now you may or may not see that permission alert in your preview. Fortunately, I am here, but I'm going to be really running in the simulator because I know for sure it's going to be working there. But first, let's add a content closure to the map view. And inside here, I'm going to add a new instance of a user annotation struct. And what this will do is it will display the person's current location using the system-styled user location indicator. Again, you may or may not see that pulsing location marker in the preview, but you will if you run the simulator. So let me do that. When I run here on my iPhone 15 Pro, I see that alert appear with that string that I entered in my info plist. So I'm going to choose to allow while using app. And then when I do that, in my case, the user annotation is placed around Cupertino because I set my location to be Apple in my simulator. Now, if your device's locale is not centered around the Apple location, however, you'll have to move your map in order to see it. And the reason my annotation is orange instead of blue is because I have a custom tint color in my assets folder. And I'll come back to this annotation in a minute to see how we can customize it if we wanted to. What I'd like to happen, though, is when I open the map, that camera position be adjusted to be around that location. So we'll need to create a state property to represent the camera position and assign it the user location case. And then we can fall back to automatic if we're denied permission. Then we can add that position argument to our map and bind it to that camera position. Well, my preview is behaving properly, and I see that it's now centered around Apple Park. Now, let me run it in the simulator. And it should be open and centered around that position. But apparently the position of Apple in the simulator is different from the one in the preview. I don't understand that. Doesn't matter. Now, if you move away from that center, though, you may have difficulty finding it again. So I'm going to add a map control that is going to allow me to get back to my annotation quickly. And for those of you in other countries, that'll make it much easier for you as well. So back in Xcode, I'm going to attach a map controls modifier to the map. And I'll use a trailing closure syntax here. And inside there, I'm going to add a map user location button control. And you'll see a new button appears at the top right of our preview. And I can, in my preview, move the map around and then tap on the button and it snaps back to my location. Let me run it again in the simulator. And when it launches, I see that same button at the top right. And here I can move my map around and then tap on that button and I gracefully return to that location. Now there are a number of options to choose from device location in my menu here. For example, I could have chosen freeway drive and you'll see your map moving as if you're in a car. For our testing, however, we want to be able to simulate that we are going to be at one of our destinations rather than at Apple. And I chose Paris, and Paris wasn't one of those choices. But I showed you way back in the first video how you can use Apple Maps to get the coordinates of any location. Now I've already done that, and from the location menu from our simulator, I'm going to choose custom location. And I'll enter the coordinates that are centered around the region that you created at the beginning of this video, which for me was Paris. And that's a latitude of 48.856788, and the longitude is 2.351077. And as soon as I confirm that change, I'm moved around Paris. But none of my annotations are being displayed. And that's because we're not accessing our SwiftData store yet. So let's do that. So first, let's import SwiftData. And then we can use a query that will fetch all of the empty place marks. We'll only see the ones that are in our current visible region in the map. So we don't need any sort or filter on our query macro. Simply a query where we'll call it list place marks, and that's the array of empty place mark. And then after the user annotation in our map content view, we can use a for each loop to loop on this to display our markers. So we'll get an instance that we can use that we'll call placeMark as the iterator. And then we can create a marker using the coordinate and the label initializer. For the coordinate, it will be our placemark.coordinate. And then for the label, I'm going to create a label with a system image. For the title of our marker, it's going to be the placemark.name. And for the system image, I'll use a star. And then I'll set the tint to yellow. This should look familiar to you, as it's exactly the same marker we created in our location destinations map view for our destinations markers. Well, if you run the app now, you should see your custom location. And around that location, you should see the markers that you added on the other tab for that location. However, you're probably going to have to zoom out a bit to see them. I'll be fixing this shortly by the end of this video. Before I move on to show you a problem that you may encounter and how you fix that, I do want to show you how you might want to customize the annotation marker. You could use a different initializer for user annotation. I'm going to choose this one where I can provide content. So for the content, I'm just going to create an image using the system name star. I'll set the image scale to large, and then apply a foreground style of blue. I can't quite see it in the preview. It's there, but let me run it in the simulator. And when I run this time, I see the star instead of that orange pulsing marker. Well, I'm not going to use this, however. I'm going to go back to that orange ball. Now, as far as I know, there is no way to set the user location in the preview. So I'm going to be running in the simulator for the rest of this video. So let's just dismiss this preview to get it out of the way. When we ran the app, we gave permission to show our current location. Well, what happens if your users deny it? How can they go and enable it again? Because your app is basically not much use without this permission. Well, let me show you this by selecting a different simulator, like an iPhone 15, and I'm going to run it there. When I launch the app here for the first time, I'm asked for that permission, and I'm going to tap Don't Allow. And then I'm taken to the trip map view, but I'm not shown my current location. Yes, I could still go to the Destinations tab and create some destinations and place markers for those locations, but I won't see them in relation to where I am at the time. You're going to have to direct your users how they can enable it if it's unavailable. Unfortunately, on the simulator, there's no way to do this anymore. I seem to recall that this was possible in the past, but for some reason it's been removed. So let me connect my development iPhone. And I'm going to run the app here to show you what I'm talking about. When I run it, you'll see that because this is a new install, I'm asked that question. So I'm going to deny. I'm not taken to my current location. So I'm going to exit to the home screen and I'll open the Settings application. I have to go to Privacy and Security. I have to tap on the Location Services, find the My Trips app listed there, and I see that the setting is currently Never. So I tap to open it, and I can change it to While Using App. And then if I switch back from the home screen and get to that app again, it's brought to the foreground, and immediately you're taken to your current location. Well, this is a bad user experience because your average user will have no idea how to do this. So what I want to do is to create a service that's going to do the following. When the app launches, it'll check to see if the permission has been granted already. And if it has, it'll go to our tab view. If not, it's going to have to go to another view that will let them know what they have to do to enable to use the app and provide a button that will open the settings to that app's privacy location services setting. Also, if for some reason the user denies access after the fact, I want it to immediately move from a map view back to that view telling them that they need to enable. And then the final thing I want it to do is to change the default camera position to be a little further out so I can see any place marks that I may have around my current location, because I find that it's too zoomed in initially. To do this, we're going to have to check the status when the app launches, as well as enlist a core location delegate function to monitor any changes after it's been granted. In the Services folder, create a new Swift file and call it LocationManager. Change the import to SwiftUI and also import core location. We don't need the full MapKit, we just need core location. And then create a class called LocationManager. And because we're going to use the latest observation framework, we can make this @observable using the observable macro. Now we will need to access an instance of that CL Location Manager class that we already used in our default view, but I don't need to observe what's going on there, so we can mark it as observation ignored. Now let me just option click on CL Location Manager. And at the bottom of this help screen here, I can drill down to the documentation to see what it offers us. There's a whole bunch of information here that's worthwhile looking into in further depth. In the Requesting Authorization for Location Services section, I see that we have a function here that we've used already. But I also see that there is an authorization status variable that's an enum of type CL authorization status. So that's going to come in handy. In the Specifying Distance and Accuracy section, I'm provided with properties that I could possibly use to improve the map's accuracy. This could be useful. In the Running the Standard Location Service section, there is a function that will start updating location so that I can follow where I am. Useful. And then in the Getting Recent Location and Heading data, I see that there is a way to get the most recent location. So we're going to need that. And then if I scroll back near the top, I find that there is a Receiving Data from Location Services. And that requires a delegate for the CL Location Manager delegate protocol. Now, if I drill down on that, I find a really important function, and that's the Location Manager did change authorization. And I'm going to need that in case the user decides to turn off location services for the app. I think I have everything there that I need to know to flush out my service now. So I'm going to create two observable properties in this class. One that will track the user location, and one that's going to track whether or not the user is currently authorized. So for user location, it will be an optional CL location type. And then is authorized will be a Boolean property that is initially false. Next, I'm going to create a function that we'll call start location services, and it's going to have to check to see if we are authorized or not, and then make a request to Location Manager's request when and use authorization function. First, let's check to see what the current manager authorization status property is. And that's one of those properties that we looked at. That's an enum. So if manager authorization status is equal to authorized always, or if the manager authorization status is equal to authorized when in use, that means we're good to go. So we can call the manager start updating location function and set is authorized to true. Else, is authorized must be set to false, and we must then issue the manager's request when in use authorization function. So now I can create an initializer so that when we create an instance of this service class, we can call this function. Now, I may also want to add some accuracy properties that override the defaults here too, but I'm not going to do that as I think the default for our purposes are fine. But you can check that documentation out for your own particular needs. Now that we know if we're authorized or not, I need two more functions. One that will set the user location property every time my location changes, and another that will change every time we change our authorization status. These functions are part of the LocationManager delegate protocol. So we have to make sure that this class conforms to that protocol. However, to meet the requirements of that LocationManager delegate protocol, we also have to make sure that it inherits from the NSObject class. Next, we're told that we must change the init to be an override init. And this also means that we'll also have to call super.init in our initializer. And then once we've done that, we can say that we want this class to act as the delegate as well. So we'll need to declare that the manager.delegate is equal to self. With that in place now, we can get some autocomplete for those functions that we need. So I'm going to create stubs for the location manager did update locations. And then the second one is the location manager did change authorization status. Now, in the first case, I see that I get an array of those locations. So our current location is going to be the last one if it finds any at all. And that'll be our current location. So we can get that and assign it to the UserLocation's observed property. In the did change authorization function, we can find that it's changed by using a switch statement on the manager's authorization status property. Well, in the cases where it's changed to authorization always or authorized when in use, we can set is authorized to true, and then we can start up the manager's request location function. In the case where we can't determine, we set is authorized to false, and then we issue a request for the when in use authorization. In the case where it's been denied, I'm going to set is authorized to false, and then I'm just going to print to the console that the access was denied, because as you'll see, we're going to trigger this to go to a different screen. In the other cases, then we can just set is authorized to true, and then start location services. Now there's one more function that's going to be required, and that is the did fail with error function. And in this case, I'm just going to print out the error's localized description. And that completes our service class. So we need to be able to use it. So I'm going to return to my starting point, the My Trips app, and I'll create a state property that will initialize this new service. and I'll call that Location Manager. And then what I can do is I can surround that Start tab with an if-else clause based on whether or not the Location Manager is authorized property is true. If it is, we go to the Start tab. But if we don't, I'm just going to present a text view for now that says, need to help user. And I want to have access to this Location Manager's user location property in my views, so I'm going to inject this into the environment. So if I return to the trip map view now, I can remove that manager property that I temporarily created and add an environment variable for the Location Manager Service. And I'll call it Location Manager. And we can now remove that on appear block. And in case you're still looking at your preview, you can add the Location Manager to the environment there. If you run this in the simulator now, where you had given permission and you've entered your locations, which was my iPhone 15 Pro, it'll work just as before. We're taken to that Paris location on launch. Now let me run this in the simulator where I denied access, which was that iPhone 15 simulator. This time I'm taken to the screen that says, need to help user. Well, let me delete the app from this simulator. And I'm going to run it once more, but this time I'm going to allow. And you'll see that we're taken to that tab view. Perfect. So let me run this now on my development iPhone where I have given permission. When I do that, I get to see my current location, which is here in North Vancouver, Canada. I'm going to switch to the settings now, though, and change that permission. And I'm going to deny it. When I return to the app, I can see I'm now presented with that text view. And if I go back to the settings, I can switch back and enable it. And then when I get back to the app, I get to see my location again. Well, now that I can see my Location Manager class is working, let me use it to my advantage. So what I want to do is to change my camera position so that I have a larger region of view. Right now, that area of focus is just too limited, and I'm not seeing my destination place marks for Paris. So in the trip map view, create a new function called Update Camera Position. In the body, I can use an if-let to unwrap the Location Manager's user location and assign it to a property called UserLocation. So if we have one, we can then create a user region, which is an MK coordinate region, and I can use a center and a span. Well, the center will be my user location center. And then we can create a span, which is an MK coordinate span with a latitude delta and a longitude delta. And I can specify both are 0.15. And then once we have that region, we can, within an animation block, assign our camera position to that region, which is the user region. But let me just go back and correct that typo first. And now I can set that region to the user region. Now, I want to run this on the simulator where I have my Paris destination set. So that's my iPhone 15 Pro. But before I do that, let me create an onAppear block so that every time we're in this view, it'll call that function. So when I run this now, and the first tab appears, my camera position now is more centered around my place marks at my location, which is Paris. Now, the last thing I want to do is to change out that text view that says need to help user. So inside the shared views group, I'm going to create a new SwiftUI file that I'm going to call LocationDenied View. And in here, I'm going to replace that text view with a content unavailable view using the label description and actions initializer. For the label, I'll change the text to location services required. And then instead of a system image, I'm going to change it to an image. And I'm going to use my launch screen image that I have in my assets folder. And I can bring back the preview here because it's just in the preview. And I can see that image now displayed. And then for the description, I'm going to change the text here to be a multi-line text view. So I can use 3 quotes. And then I can now provide my text on different lines and step-by-step instructions. So 1, tap the button below and go to privacy and security. I'm including that in quotes. Step 2, on a new line, tap on location services. A new line. Step 3, locate the My Trips app and tap on it. And then step 4, change the setting to while using the app. And I don't like this centered, so I'm going to change the multi-text alignment here to leading. Now for the button, I'm going to change the text view to say open settings. And then for the action, I can call a UI application dot shared open function. And that's going to require a URL. And we can make the URL from a string UI application dot open settings URL string. And it'll have to be force unwrapped. But this is perfectly safe. And then for the options dictionary, I'm just going to make it an empty dictionary. And then for the completion handler, I'm going to use nil. And I'll set the button style to be bordered prominent. So I can return now to the app starting point, the My Trips app file, and change that else clause to be now the location denied view. So one final test to finish this video off. I'm going to open my test device now and delete the app, and then I'm going to run it again. And this time I'm not going to allow. And you can see I'm taken to the new view where I'm given some instructions to follow. Once I've done that, I can return to the app and I see that it's working as desired. Remember, this won't work in the simulator because you can't access the location services from the privacy and security menu anymore on the simulator. So that's it for this long video today, but we've accomplished quite a bit. We're getting close to the end of this series. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. And if we're not at the end of this series, make sure you subscribe to my channel and get that notification so that you're notified when new videos in the series are dropped. Otherwise, just check out the next video in the playlist. Thanks for watching.